start, I have a safety announcement for you. Please listen carefully to the following safety announcement. You may ignore the rest of the announcements that come later during the course of the meeting. The evacuation signal in this building is in the form of audible sirens and flashing beacons in certain areas. If the alarm makes a continuous sound, please make your way to the exit nearest to you, which, as they say in the planes, please sort out for yourselves now. Proceed in an orderly fashion. What, this lot? Goodness. Filing out from each end of each row. In addition to the front exits, emergency exits are situated at the back of the theatre and they are clearly signed. Please use all exits in an emergency, but do not use any lifts. Once outside, please assemble on the backfield outside this building. Please do not re-enter any building until told that it is safe to do so by a member of the fire brigade or Goldsmiths college staff. If you require first aid at all, please contact a member of Goldsmiths staff or the welcome desk who will be able to offer assistance. Toilets are located in the western atrium. Thank you very much. We move on to apologies for absence. I'm pleased to say we're very clearly misspoke that, didn't I? Quorate for this meeting. Apologies. On behalf of Graham Lay, who has joined the board, and I hope he will be endorsing later, he is unable to attend today. Otherwise, you've received the list from Mary?
Yes. Which
will be printed in due course. So the first thing to do is to approve the meeting minutes of the 35th Annual General Meeting. Can we have a proposer for the minutes?
Yes, Bill Hibbert speaking. I would like to propose that these minutes are accepted.
Anyone like to raise any points about the minutes? Anyone like to second the proposal? Thank you very much. I should, by the way, have started by introducing this fearsome-looking team. We have Doug Davis over to the left, Bill Hibbert, the Reverend Canon David Grimwood, Richard Smith, Claire Rulston, Nigel Orchard, Richard Wallace, David Smith, and you know the editor. Okay. We're going to follow just about the notice of meeting, but I'm now, we should have a vote, shouldn't we? Those in favour of the minutes? Yeah. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention there. Two. Thank you very much. I'm now going to talk about the 2018, and because we've now run well into 2019, well beyond the end of our calendar year, I'm going to talk of some of what has happened this year. Shall then hand over to Richard Wallace for a commentary both on the 2018 accounts and progress against this year's budget, for which she shall then, after an opportunity of questions, seek your formal approval of the accounts, not the budget. Later in the meeting, before any other business, I will offer some thoughts on the future of Ringing World and deal with a couple of other bits of business. So, do you mind if I sit down or do you wish to stand up? Larger target or smaller target? Okay, I'll sit down then. I'm getting on. Right, our report and accounts give an extensive statement on what we did in 2018, and I shall not cover that ground all over again. It was a year when we did well, but we consolidated and built on the investments in IT and in the editorial team from the previous couple of years. I believe that the quality and range of the paper has continued to improve, and many thanks are due to Robert and Will and to our contributors. Will, you up there somewhere? Congratulations, I think it's you. Okay, Linda Garton's fourth and last youth contest was a great success, although she had to deal with a very last-minute change of the main venue that was dropped on her. We welcomed David Hull as her replacement, and his first contest in Liverpool was also highly successful, as was his modification of the concluding session to make it quicker. Bellboard registered users increased by 17%, with a modest increase in the page views. Behind the scenes, much was done by Richard Smith to improve the quality and presentation of data and the ability for the data to be analysed, to facilitate the work of administering and problem fixing, and to allow bulk discounts on merchandise. Frustration, however, persisted in our shortage of the specialised resources needed to write the software to start exploiting the untapped potential of Bellboard. But earlier this year, Bill Hibbert started work on streamlining the Peels printing process via Bellboard. Completion will take some time. Several people at last year's AGM asked us to provide an app for reading the online version. Development is in hand, but has been slower than we would have liked, owing to other demands on our staff. The key problem is to adapt our production software and the way we use it so that transfer to an app is a straightforward and automatic process. The board has decided it is time to reduce our use of plastic materials. Although our present wrapper is recyclable in some limited local authority areas, we shall be changing to a home compostable wrapper that is also more readily recyclable. This will be done when the current supply of our present wrapping material has been used up after another 6 or so issues. Test mailings have been satisfactorily carried out with the new wrappers. The board has recently discovered that the actual postage costs for overseas print subscribers, as paid by our printer, are less than we'd been using to set the overseas rate. The board is working to determine what further action is appropriate, including revising overseas subscription rates. This may have some impact on this year's and next year's financial outcome. Since last year, one of our board members has been regularly attending meetings of the Council's Executive Committee to improve liaison and explore areas of mutual advantage. If David Smith is re-elected to the Council, that would also strengthen links with the Council, but editorial independence will be fiercely defended, and the editorial pen will continue to be dipped in vitriol when he or she considers the Council needs chivying. Likewise, we've discussed how ART and the Ringing World can work together for mutual advantage. An early result of this is a discounted Ringing World subscription offer to ART Learning the Ropes Facebook readers. So, that being said, I hand over to Richard. You will have a chance to ask questions at the end of this section.
As Nigel has already said, it has been a good year for the Ringing World, even though it has been 8 months since the year end. There is some financial commentary on pages 1 and 8 of the Chairman's report, so I won't repeat that now, but try to highlight some of the more salient points. At this point, I would mention the clean report from the Independent Examiner once again this year on page 10. The figures on pages 11 to 20 of the report are what we legally provide and file with the Charities Commission and Companies House. More interesting are probably pages 21 and 22 that are provided just to you, our members, and these are the ones I shall be referring to over the next few minutes, if you wish to turn to those pages now. The bottom line surplus is higher than our target of 2% of income, around £8,000, that we put in reserves to fund longer-term projects and investments. I shall come on to what we did better than planned as I go through the figures. Income has increased by nearly £5,000 this year. Given what we believe the age bands of our subscriber profile to be, this always tends to exceed the prudent budget that has been set. At some point, I expect the non-renewal rate to increase, and am pessimistic accordingly. We lost 80 paper subscribers this year and are on track for a similar number this year, net loss that is, but we had 50 new online subscribers. In a year or two, it could easily be that more than 20% of our subscriptions will be online ones, and that is a big challenge for the company in several ways. The directors are very grateful for the continued generosity of ringers who donate nearly £50,000 each year. You can work out for yourself the gap in the bottom line if the company didn't get that level of income. Another important source of income is the merchandise we sell, diaries, calendars and Christmas cards, with some other items we try every now and again. All three had reduced sales last year, but careful control of costs mean we made a reasonable surplus, though we don't cross-charge the admin of distribution and that sort of thing. The final material source of income is adverts. Whilst you no longer see that many adverts in the paper, billboard adverts have proved a popular way of attracting people's attention. Once we get the money in, we spend most of it. Our highest cost, around 40% of the total, is the staff we employ. Robert and Will have the weekly task of producing the Ringing World that you see each week. There are also Chris, Christine and Jackie doing the more behind-the-scenes work to keep everything going. There were higher pension costs this year, as well as an inflation equaling pay increase. The next two large areas are franking and printing of the paper copies. At £55,000 and £50,000 respectively, that again is nearly 50% of total costs as well. Both are consistent with last year, as lower subscriber numbers match the increased charges. At this point, I should note that we have to charge VAT on the online subscription, so our income is not what we charge online subscribers. I have already covered the net income from merchandise, on which we spend over £15,000 each year. Other major items of spend are the leased premises in Andover, as well as what you would expect an office to need: phones, stationery, cleaning. Altogether, £280,000 spend is the same as last year. Referring briefly back to page 12, that shows the balance sheet and reserves of the Ringing World. These are healthy at the moment. That gives the directors some room for investment in the future. A year and a bit ago in Lancaster, I promised that whilst we were not planning to change the company's year end after delay to the date of the AGM, we would give a mid-year update on how the company is doing. As shown on this slide, in general terms, the directors have budgeted for a small surplus this year. After 6 months, it was slightly behind budget, though not enough to concern the board. The profiling of the budget means merchandise sales are scheduled for the final quarter of the year, though don't let that stop you buying and carrying what you can away from our stall this weekend. This is a material income stream that can change the bottom line. Both income and expenditure are slightly behind budget. Sales are down by £500, although that's less than 0.5%, and donations are behind by £1,500, though that varies as and when special ringing events happen. We also managed to sell some items of stock in the new year that brought in some additional money. The expectation is to at least break even with a new good card available and another reprint of the popular one from 2 years ago, an improved diary, the front section that is, you can't really do much to the dates, except we have got the May bank holiday right on the 8th of May, I believe, and the North Wales calendar contributing. Under expenditure, there are no large variances, even on the major expense items such as payroll and franking. Printing costs are lower, as there hasn't been a need for too many extra pages so far this year. Also, we are still encouraging submissions for the front page photograph, for which we pay £25. Other costs are slightly above budget across the board, but nothing stands out. I started by saying 2019 was a good year. 2020 will be one where change will start to happen with the departure of our editor and chairman, and 2021 onwards promises to be exciting times for the paper and online Ringing World. I'll end there and take any questions that you might have. If I don't have an answer to hand, I'll try and find out the answer and get back to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Now, we invite questions, comments on the company's account, which includes the very detailed chairman's report that was published in it. Any questions over there?
My name is Jill
Can you wait for the microphone, please? Some of us are getting a bit deaf.
Just wondered if you prefer people to have an online copy or to buy the paper one from an economic point of view?
From an economic point of view, actually, our income goes down by about £7 if you transfer from an annual print version to the online version. Well, we like to think that the print version gives you something. It's very high quality with some lovely front page photos and so on, and certainly I prefer to read it that way. And as I say, the income effect is unfortunately, at the moment, the board may decide to do something about this, not positive if you transfer. Thank you.
Scotland, Kent. Just a question about other expenditure. Is there anything of note in that negative variance, and what is included in other?
I mean, the main other expenditure is the office costs, the 20% that aren't covered by there, and telephone and the utilities and that sort of thing, and some of the stationery and that sort of thing. But there wasn't anything that particularly stood out by more than a couple of £100. It was just several things added together.
Okay, any other questions? Over there.
Robert Perry, Truro Guild. This meeting is taking place just over 3 months later in the year than previous meetings have taken place, and therefore the accounts which we are considering are to that extent that much more historic. I wonder whether there's any advantage to the company in changing its financial year to end on, say, the 31st of March, which would equate the historicity of the account which we consider at each annual meeting with the figures we have in front of us.
Okay, yes, a very good point. We've tried to bring you up to date with how we're doing this year. We didn't wish this time to change the reporting year of the Ringing World, partly because we understood this to be a bit of an experiment by the Central Council, and we would wish to make sure that before we did anything to change, that this was now the future position. Richard, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think we just didn't want to flip-flop back if this meeting went back to May or anything like that. And it was the update on the budget that we did to sort of try initially to address that concern. But I mean, we haven't decided definitely not to do it. It's just a wait and see at the moment to see what happens elsewhere in the Central Council world.
Any other questions?
Anthony Lovelwood, Salisbury. Over the last few years, you've repeatedly been asked about going to 2 weekly issues. Has that had any further thoughts?
Yes, Anthony, it has. Originally, we were looking at going fortnightly because our finances were looking very iffy. And although we would be printing a larger edition each fortnight, there'd be a big saving on the franking, the distribution costs. Fortunately, with the turnaround in our finances, we have not had to go down that route for that reason. You may also remember that we conducted a very extensive survey. We had 3,500 responses to it a few years ago. And of the subscribers, the majority was absolutely clear that they wanted us to continue weekly unless we had to change to fortnightly for financial reasons. The response of the 1,500 or so people who replied who were not subscribers was, interestingly, that we should go monthly. I and the board prefer to rely on those who speak with their checkbooks. Anything else? Yes, over there.
Mark from the GB. This may just be me, but in the old days when I subscribed to the paper version, it would come in through your letterbox and you would read it all. At least you would see it. Now, I love the PDF version. It's fabulous, and I'd happily pay a bit more for it if that helps your finances. But most of the time I forget on Friday that it's Ringing World Day, and I don't look at it. So is there a way you can send a notification, an email to tell me I have the Ringing World Day? It seems like a simple thing, but that would really help me. I may be the only one.
Thank you, Mark. This is, and we've got your name for paying more for the online version. Yes, this is not just a problem for the Ringing World. A lot of professional and other journals have switched to sending you a version just online. Some of them notify you. I've always thought that actually having the printed copy requires you to do something with it. Even if it's only pick it up from the mat and transfer it to your waste paper basket, you at least know you've got it. It shouldn't be too hard, I think, to do as you suggest and put a reminder in. This does, of course, imply that there are people not desperately getting up in the morning on Thursday or Friday to read their Ringing Worlds and therefore self-reminded. But we'll take your point on board. That one, thank you. Anything else on that? Okay, could I have a proposer for the company's accounts?
So I'll propose the accounts within the Chairman's report.
And a seconder?
Yes, I'm happy to second.
Could we see those in favour? Okay, those against? Any abstentions? There's an abstention over there. Okay, thank you very much for that. Before we move on to the next two items on the agenda, the motion re the objects of the company and appointing directors, I should say that I am hoping this time, rather than having a written secret ballot, to deal with both by a show of hands, obviously in the case of the directors, having asked the candidates to leave the room. On the other hand, under the articles of the company, if 20 people should object to having it by a show of hands and wish to have a poll, then I shall be obliged to grant that. Likewise, if the voting should be so close that I deem it necessary to clarify with a poll, we will have a poll. We have come prepared for it. But one of the things, particularly in the appointment of directors, is that that isn't determined by the end of the meeting if we have a secret ballot, and it has to be announced later during the course of the Central Council's meeting. So we'll move on to the motion re the objects of the company. Have we got the, yes, we've got the relevant slide up, and I asked the Reverend Canon David Grimwood to propose the motion.
Thank you. As a board, we've been considering very carefully about how to contribute most effectively and usefully to the future health of bell ringing and ringers. And we're having been able to turn the finances around, we're now in a position where we can look forward and have a broader vision and longer term plan. The journal continues to be well appreciated, and the editor and editorial assistant are always striving to maintain and develop the quality and appeal of its content. Bell Board has established itself as a go-to website for information and news, as well as recording all sorts of achievements. Ahead lie many opportunities and challenges for enhancing the ringing world's contribution to the healthy future of ringing. But the ringing world as a charity has to work within its charitable objects. These are the legal basis for our activities as approved by the Charity Commission. These charitable objects lay down what the ringing world has authority to do and what is its primary purpose. Now, the Charity Commission requires charities to provide a public benefit which can be described and measured. To make this clear, the Commission has identified 9 main types of charitable activity, and charities must fit into one of them. Currently, the ringing world objects belong in the religious category, aiming to promote the mission of the church. It's something I care about, actually. But while bell ringing is very much part of the church activity, that's not quite the same as making a priority of winning converts to Christianity. Ringing church bells on a Sunday certainly proclaims the presence of the church and carries all sorts of resonances about our experiences of faith and life, and the ringing world wants to celebrate and applaud that. However, the ringing world has a particular place within the world of ringing, and it encompasses actually a far wider range of ringing interests, such as the articles offering guides to basic change ringing, introducing musical surprise methods, I hope we're all ringing the current month one, sharing the experience of lively, enthusiastic groups of ringers on their tours and so on, national competitions, including the youth competition, stories of bells restored and augmented, interviews with inspirational ringers, and so on. And of course, ringing is not actually limited to church tower bells, but embraces handbell ringing, mini rings, secular towers, all of which is painstakingly recorded in the pages of the journal. So while the ringing world is reflecting to some extent its legal aim and authority, the main focus lies in promoting ringing, and it always has done. Therefore, the board is asking you as company members to change the charitable objects from a religious focus to an educational focus. This would enable the ringing world to continue to promote ringing through the journal's pages and on bellboard and in other ways, to contribute fully to the encouragement and support of ringers and ringing, not just on Sundays, but with a clear authority and integrity. Ringing for services and on Sundays and in churches will of course benefit, and the ringing world will continue to encourage ringers to take a positive interest and understanding in the life of the churches and of the Christian faith. Just read my articles if you're not sure. In fact, nothing will change within the ringing world apart from the legal authority that allows us, the ringing world as a charitable company, to do with confidence what it actually has been doing for many years, to foster ringing in its widest sense. So we're not talking about ringing in general, but about the particular focus on contribution of the ringing world. The Charity Commission has given its approval to us bringing this to you, do I need to say any more about proposing it?
No, you've proposed it, I think.
Oh, right, that's all right then.
Thank you. Ticking box. That proposal was made by the chairman-elect of the ringing world. Now I, as the retiring chairman, am seconding this motion because we both feel that it is important that the board goes forward with a very clear mandate and objects. As a tower captain, I work hard to ensure good relations with the church and that our ringing and other efforts support our church in its mission. Unlike the majority of our band, I'm a regular communicant in the church. I have therefore had to think hard about whether this motion represents any distancing of the Ringing World Limited and its publications from the church, which I would not wish to happen. We are inextricably connected, not only because of the location within the church's properties of the majority of the rings of bells we enjoy, but also for many of us through faith. However, as David has just said, this is not the case. We are not distancing the ringing world from the church. The board needs a clear and realistic set of objects against which to develop the future of the company, and what is proposed actually reflects, as David has said, what this charitable company has been doing for years, i.e. promoting the art and science of bell ringing in all its forms, both in church towers and secular rings, and for church services and other reasons. Nor is this a secularist takeover of the company. Some of those few people who've been kind enough to give us their reactions to the article David wrote in the Ringing World in March have pointed out that we can continue to develop the company within the existing very sound objects. To a fair extent, this is true, but represents more of a fudge than a clear steer. If this motion is not passed, although the board would very much wish it to be passed, the board can continue with its work, so it's not a resigning issue for the board. But we ask for your consent to a clearer and more realistic set of objects. I now throw this open for questions, comments, and so on. Over there.
Dave Kelly, fellow. I think it's a very good idea. However, I give you a warning. The Caltech Trust tried something similar a few years ago when we migrated to the CIO, and the Charity Commissioners wouldn't allow us to change away from religion.
David, thank you for the warning, but David and I have checked with the Charity Commissioners, and they say that the way that we have written these objectives, if approved by yourselves, would be acceptable under the educational heading, rather than the religious under which we currently work. Maybe it's because the bells and the church are more inextricably linked in your excellent work in the Caltech Trust. Less educational, perhaps. Yeah, thank you.
In the middle.
Stephen Shemtek, Chester Diocesan Guild. Minor point really, but the must-have of the Ringing World says it's the weekly journal for church bell ringers since God knows when, like 1911. Will you be changing that to church bell ringers?
I would have thought the board ought to give very serious consideration to that. Thank you.
It's also 2 words rather than 1, like in proposed revision.
Ah.
Really big nitpicks.
Thank you. We may rely on our members for nitpicking. John.
John Harrison. It's interesting to compare the analysis that you've done looking at Charity Commissioners' rules and the analysis that I did 3 years ago, was it? And the points that you've made and the points that I made in my speech at Portsmouth are almost exactly the same. We are currently, the council was operating under a fudge with its terms of reference, and I think you were correct in saying that you could carry on operating under your current terms in a fudge. The new ones are much more realistic. They represent what you actually do, and they represent what the ringing community wants you to do, so I'd certainly support this.
Thank you very much, Don. Have we any more comments? Or, yes, over there.
Jackie Roberts, Guildford Guild. Does it have to be one or the other? Does it have to be education or religion? Can't it be both? And does that make any difference?
Jackie,
fudge in both directions?
You may have a sweet tooth, I don't. I wouldn't see any point in so doing. We believe that what we've now put is very clear. When you were chairing the Ringing World, you managed with the previous ones.
We fudged it, yeah.
Yeah, you fudged it. The board sees no reason to go on fudging. And as things move forward and the challenges have to be faced, which I will be referring to a bit later, I think the board could do with a very clear steer. There's one up there.
Chris Mew, Coventry Diocesan Guild. I think there are two things here. I don't see that the existing objects prevent the Ringing World board carrying on not only with the things it has done in the past, but extending the range of educational and training initiatives to whatever extent they want. I sat on the Ring of World Board, I think, for 6 years, and then attended as a guest as president of the council. And at no time during that period was the charitable objects referred to directly, and neither did the board feel inhibited from what was published as content in the Ring World and what articles and educational material were submitted and fully supported. I think my personal view is that we will be sending out the wrong message by divorcing ourselves from the question of promoting Christian worship. That is clearly something which a lot of ringers feel very strongly about. It is part of our duty. Having said that, the existing charitable objects do not exclude secular ringing in other denominations. We already encompass Roman Catholic Church, Church in Wales, Church in Scotland, and indeed overseas. There's nothing in the existing objects which prevents us being inclusive, and nothing in the existing objects which prevents what the chairman and the proposer are saying. Clearly, David has got a vested interest as a minister, but I don't think this change is really necessary in enabling the Ring World and its board to do anything more or extra to what it's been doing already. It has been marvellous over the years, and the whole team must be congratulated on that. But I do think that this is an unnecessary step.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure David's grateful for reference to his vestment interests. Over there.
Tina Stuckland, Scottish Association. Can I come out very strongly in support of this motion? The general trend in all the ringing organizations over the past couple of years has been toward increased inclusivity, and this is another step in that direction. And as my colleague Christopher points out, the new charitable objects don't certainly preclude involvement in the church. But let's recognize that when we tend to talk about church activities in the context of ringing, we tend to talk about the church. And as a member, as a resident in a country that does not have a state-sponsored church and has many churches and has bell towers in many churches as well as bell towers in many secular locations, and also as an active member of a cathedral that encourages ecumenical outreach and would quite happily have us ring for Eid and Jewish festivals and other festivals in and around the surrounding community. Anything that makes us look more diverse and more inclusive, I think will be a good thing as more and more public attention is coming into bell ringing. So I strongly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael over there. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael Churchbridge from Portsmouth Guild. I think you know what I'm going to say, and I wasn't proposing to speak to this motion, but having heard previous speakers, I think I need to, for my own satisfaction, if you like. It was back in 1982 that the late Bill Cartwright, who was a Central Council member and honorary solicitor to the Council, Bob Cools, known to many of us here, and myself were charged with drawing up the proposed Memorandum and Articles of Association of the new company and its incorporation, and registering with the Companies House and the Charity Commission. We naturally assumed that the approval of the Charity Commission would be granted on religious grounds, hence the first part of the present objects clause on the screen. However, the Charity Commission refused registration, but helpfully suggested that we also included the publication of educational and literary works. We had just purchased the Ringer's Notebook and Diary from Messrs. Viggers and Hodgson, the deal spearheaded by my good friend on my right, Andrew Wilby. So we then proceeded with registration and accepted by the Charity Commission on educational grounds and not on the religious grounds solely. So personally, I'm not surprised that the Charity Commission have indicated approval to the proposed amended objects, but I do ask myself, like Chris Mew, why bother? As both categories of religion and education are already encompassed within the present objects clause. Personally, I am disappointed to see that the word Christian may well be dropped from the charitable objects clause if we proceed and pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Perry, Chair of Guild. I came into ringing as a service to the church, and it's still my primary motivation for being a ringer. And when I saw the proposed change, I was disappointed, and I fully intended to vote against it. But having heard what the proposer and the seconder have both said on the subject, I'm entirely happy with it. I can see entirely why it's been proposed as a change. I listened with care to what others have just said. I entirely respect their reasons for doing so. But for myself, I have no problem with supporting it, and I encourage everybody else to do so as well.
Any other?
I've got the microphone here. Caroline Stockman-Kent. Yeah. Certainly when I came into ringing, a lot of the attraction was being a Christian, calling people to worship. When I think of what the ringing world does, though, the proposed revised objects says it to me. And I agree very much with Tina on the diversity angle, but I would also say when people say why change, I'd ask the question, coming under education, isn't there more opportunity to be able to raise funds from trusts and other bodies by coming under education? So I think there's also, when we say why change, for me I think there's a business reason for changing, but clearly it's a values matter making a decision as well, and I would very much support the revision.
I'd like to make a comment as a private individual rather than a board member. I'm a practising Christian, and so the thought of removing that word from the charitable objectives did give me some pause for thought. However, having tried to get charity registration for my wife's charity and failed because of a perceived element of fudge in the application by the Charity Commission, I think given that the Charity Commission has already accepted these objectives, and given that that is what we're doing, it avoids any risk to the ringing world of losing its charity registration for some reason, that we're no longer acting out the actual words of our objectives, and to lose that charity registration will be a big financial issue for us. And this change removes that risk.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Can I?
Yes?
Yeah, can I make a quick point? It is the case that the current objectives do cause an active difficulty on occasion. My remit on the board has almost invariably been on the technology side, and I quite frequently find myself approaching technology companies saying, can I use your service on behalf of the ringing world? Do you offer a charitable discount or even a free charitable service? And 9 times out of 10, the answer comes back, yes, we have a charitable discount. It does not apply to political or religious charities. And I then have to spend a long time explaining, yes, on paper we're a religious charity. No, in practice we're not a religious charity. Sometimes I get somewhere, sometimes I don't. It is a problem.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes, up there.
Thank you. James Ramsell from the St Martin's Guild. Much as I enjoy ringing bells on Sundays, I do not feel the ringing world is much more education. I feel the revised objectives affect what it does more. And we must also remember that a lot of our readers are not Christians, they are atheists or whatever, and it serves them just as well as it serves the Christians amongst us. Also, picking up on a comment Chris New made about the charitable objectives not being referenced once in 6 years, I would suggest that this is possibly because they were not relevant. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't want to hurry you on this important matter, but we need to draw it to a conclusion soon.
Andrew Wilby, Colleges. I was leaning towards agreeing with the people that said, why bother? But I think the contribution of Richard Smith a moment ago actually made it for me. I've been in those sort of situations as well. And so we do have people looking at our charitable objectives from time to time in our commercial transactions. And it's quite important that they're clear. So I think Richard was dead right. I can sympathise with these problems with current ones. So that has persuaded me to support the motion.
Thank you very much. Any last questions or comments? As I said earlier, I would like to be able to do this by a show of hands, but you have the ability, if 20 or more of you wish to have it by a secret ballot, to ask for that. So at this point in the proceedings, may I ask for a show of hands if you wish us to proceed by secret ballot rather than by putting this motion that's under consideration to a secret ballot. Those in favour or those wishing me to conduct this by secret ballots, please show. I think I see one up there, or it might have been a scratching of an ear. Okay, in that case, I put the motion to you to change the objects of the charitable company as illustrated up here. Those in favour? Those against? Please count. Any abstentions? Sorry, can we have against again, please? Just, yeah, okay. Got those?
7. Yeah.
Right. Any abstentions? 4. 4, I think. 5.
Oh, I counted 5.
We have another one there, do we? 6, right.
Arms nice and high. Yeah. 6. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that is completely clear, and thank you for your support. I would say on a personal basis, tower captains, those leading ringing in churches, please continue to work to bring ringers and the church together. That is very important, and it's not related to the objectives of the ringing world. Okay, thank you for that. We now go on to appointment of directors. In accordance with paragraphs 26 and 27 of the articles, 1/3 of the directors retire each year, being those longest in office since their last appointment or reappointment. Bill Hibbert, Richard Smith and I accordingly have retired. Richard Smith is standing for re-election. You're also asked to vote on the appointment of 3 new directors appointed by the trustees since the last AGM in accordance with paragraph 34. These are Doug Davis, Graham Lay, who, as I say, apologised for not being able to be here today, and David Smith. Information about these candidates and their proposers has been circulated. I now ask for seconders for each of them. Will someone second Richard Smith? Did you get someone there? I don't think we need second. Okay. Will someone second Doug Davis? No, you've got a few friends.
You're writing the names down, aren't you?
Will someone second Graham Lay? There. And will someone second David Smith? Right, thank you very much. Now, again, on a procedural matter, I would like to do this by a show of hands, having asked these gentlemen to leave the room. Could I ask for a show? Well, you don't have to leave the room if there's a secret ballot, do you? Then you won't know who your enemies are. Right. Don't be premature. May I have a show of hands for those who would prefer this to be conducted by a secret ballot rather than by a show of hands? So indicate if you would prefer a secret ballot. Right. Show of hands appears to be appropriate, so you may now.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, would it be possible for any candidates present to stand up, even the ones that are outside who may still be standing up for a while?
They are standing up.
All of you on the table, apart from Claire, look exactly the same.
I think, Jane, if you could just repeat that more clearly. We've had a request down here that they didn't quite hear what was being said.
We're going to vote on this.
No.
That's the first time anybody's asked to hear twice what I've already said.
That, Jane, is because we didn't hear it the first time.
I can start very slowly. Jane Wilkinson, Society of Royal Camera Reviewers. Would it be possible, because everybody at the table, apart from Claire and Robert, look exactly the same, to ask people to identify themselves so that we know who we're voting for?
Could you ask the candidates to come round here?
It's a beauty parade.
Right. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Doug Davis, we have David Smith, and at far corner, we got Richard Smith. I did introduce them at the beginning. There they are. Now you can put the names to the faces more easily. Kate.
Kate Fable, sorry. Can we just be told how many vacancies there are that we're voting for? Are we voting for all of them?
Well, the limit is currently
10, and this brings us up to 9.
Yeah, this will bring the board up to 9, which is within our limit. Okay, now if you like to push off, have a coffee.
Well, we're going to have lunch early.
And you've got to remain standing.
There will be an appearance fee next time.
What does Graham Lane look like?
I'm sorry, my...
Same as all these.
Yeah, exactly the same as the rest of us.
There is lurking behind that a more serious point that the board is very sably in terms of ethnicity and gender, which is to be regretted, and it is really only because we haven't attracted candidates putting themselves forward. That being said, I'm extremely pleased with the quality and range of skills of those candidates. So, if I may take the voting in order. Richard Smith for re-election. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? There's an abstention up there. Okay, Richard is re-elected. Doug Davis. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? There's an abstention here. Right, so I declare him elected. Graham Lay. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thinking about 5. 5 abstentions. I declare him elected. And David Smith. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Yeah, we have an abstention there. Okay, haul them back, indigestion or not. And thank you very much for agreeing to this speeding up of the process. Yeah, you can come in. Sorry you can't have lunch.
I've been sentenced to another 3 years.
You have indeed. What I'd have done if you'd vetoed our bellboard man, I hate to think. Although actually what David would have done, not me.
Thank you.
Right, we now move to the appointment of the independent examiner, and the proposal is for Langdowns, DFK, chartered accountants and business advisors who've been doing the job. They took on board Don Valida, didn't they, who was our previous independent examiner, and to authorise the directors to fix their remuneration. Have we a proposer? Doug?
Yeah, I'll propose
Good. And have we a seconder? We have a seconder. Any questions? Right. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, I declare that is dealt with. Okay, before any other business, I'd like to offer a few comments about the future of the company and to deal with a couple of bits of business. I am frankly a bit sorry to be leaving the board at a time when the long-discussed major project for streamlining the Peel's printing process is finally underway and should yield substantial savings in production costs. Also, we have this year brought into the board 3 new members whom you have now kindly endorsed and who are already making a significant contribution. They greatly strengthen the board's capabilities in strategy and business planning, IT in its widest sense, and publishing, and I'm sure that the new board will achieve much. The company's financial reserves have been restored over the last 4 years to a level where the board can afford to invest in new ways of serving its audience. The board shortly faces the future without Robert as editor, and I shall be speaking more about that. This is both a challenge and an opportunity, but without the strong support given by our subscribers and donors over the last few years, we would now be in the much worse position of not having any other member of the editorial staff. As it is, we have Will Bosworth, who has the experience and skill to continue high-quality production of the paper while further staff are sought. That same financial support enabled the major updating of our IT systems, allowing Will to do most of his work without coming to the office. The same facility greatly extends the geographic area from which we can seek further staff. The board has considered carefully what skills are needed in the editorial team to steer the paper through the challenges it faces and is managing the process accordingly. The wider range of skills sought has been outlined in the advertisements, and the new editor will have a major role in the recruitment of further staff. The challenges are many. The number of subscriptions to the printed version has declined seemingly inexorably over many years and has not been wholly offset by the good annual percentage increases from a low base in the online subscribers. The demographics of the ringing population are changing. There are pockets of success in recruiting younger ringers, and the Ringing World National Youth Contests illustrates and encourages this. But many of us find we are only attracting older people around retirement age, most of whom will not progress far enough or move round enough to be interested in the people and performances we report, though of course our learning material should be valued by them. We believe that subscribing to the Ringing World shows that a person wishes to be part of the wider world of bell ringing and to support that heritage. The Ringing World remains a strong brand. The survey we carried out shortly after I became chairman showed that the average age of Ringing World subscribers was 10 years above that of the non-subscribers who responded, representing a possible cliff edge in subscriptions. However, we have valuable assets like Bell Board and a new board willing and able to take up the challenges. Managing the ringing world has never been a walk in the park and never will be. I would like to thank you, the company members, for allowing the board I have led to get on with dealing matters as we thought fit and supporting our efforts. I pay tribute to those who've been board members over the years since the Ringing World Limited was constituted. They gave us a sound foundation on which to continue to build. And I would say at this point that it is no reflection on the excellent work they did in setting up that constitution that we have now, so many years later, decided that maybe it needs a slightly different focus. I offer my successor, David Grimwood, and the board my very best wishes for their success. It's been very stimulating and rewarding working with this committed, able, and hard-working board. The company faces the future without two of its long-term stalwart members. Bill Hibbert has served on the board for 15 years. His experience in publishing and in business management have been invaluable assets for the board, as has his general sound advice. In particular, he has done an immense amount of development of the company's software. He managed the recent complete overhaul and updating of the production software, which, because of the way the old systems had been used and configured, led to many problems in the implementation process. Bill had to invest a lot of time, including on production days in Andover, to ensure that the problems did not prevent production and were gradually sorted out. He has also recently updated the subscriptions software. The company is not completely losing his services. As previously mentioned, he is working on the Bellboard software necessary to streamline the peel printing process, a major piece of work. We owe Bill a considerable debt for all he has done. I have a piece of paper here which I've now found. Right. It falls to me, as one of the Ringing World chairmen, that Robert has had to tolerate, humour, politely ignore during his remarkable 19 years plus in office as the Ringing World editor to attempt to pay an adequate tribute to his many achievements. In fact, we'd somewhat distantly worked together before, as we both fled national power at about the same time during one of the company's periodic staff purges. He took over following the awkward departure of the previous editor and quickly restored continuity and trust, even in the face of the resignation of the entire board at the Norwich AGM. He rose to the challenges raised by new technology and the initially hostile advent of Campanophile as a serious online competitor, which eventually resulted in friendlier cooperation and ultimately the commissioning of our own highly successful Bellboard website. He broadened the outlook and appeal of the journal while respecting tradition and without alienating existing subscribers, and fostered an imaginative and innovative use of colour and design within the constraints of the existing format. He commissioned many excellent regular features and individual articles over the years. Who could forget the late John Camp's beautifully written From the E-Lists column, which helped bridge the growing divide between the digital and print worlds. He was a consistent and successful advocate for Central Council reform, never afraid to express a considered opinion within an editorial, but maintaining impartial reporting of the facts and airing alternative views on all topics without fear or favour. He was lumbered with 3 office moves, fortunately in each case an improvement of facilities, if not location. There were various demanding staff issues along the way, none of which were allowed to impact on weekly production of the paper. He played a leading role in the Ringing World Centenary celebrations of 2011 and the founding of the youth contest that year, which now plays a major part in the development of new young ringers. He is the only editor in ringing world history to get away with publishing a picture of naked ladies on page 3. They were in a cathedral, but perhaps that's a tenuous excuse. There are dark but unproven suspicions that the occasional provocative letter came from his disguised hand. He maintained excellent contacts with the Bell founders and key players in the trade and exercise, and played an active part as an honorary and additional member of the Central Council, as a member variously of its Admin Committee, Public Relations Committee, and Redundant Bells Committee. He was always on call as an articulate ambassador for the exercise when called upon to give radio, TV, and newspaper interviews, which he did extremely well. His dedication has been remarkable. As editor, he was never off duty, as he would always be considered as speaking on behalf of the ringing world. And until the last 3 years, when we became able, through your kind donations, to provide him with an editorial assistant, he was the sole member of the editorial staff, and as such had to try to get volunteer stand-in editors in order to take time off, and this was increasingly difficult. As chairman, what struck me most about him was his very sound judgment and his extensive knowledge of the exercise and so many of the key people in it. The knowledge of people and their, let us say, personal circumstances enabled the paper to avoid embarrassing situations, and tactfully communicated helped me avoid some dangerous banana skins. He leaves the ringing world in generally good shape, including a capable, loyal and dedicated team of staff at Andover. His will be a hard act to follow. We have made arrangements for you to contribute to a collection. See or email Claire about that. But the boards have personally contributed to this memento, which I now have the pleasure to present to him.
Does it work? Can I have
Don't leave yet! Not a fire alarm! Okay, I have been asked if one or two people could offer comments from the floor. This will have to be quite limited, but Mary, you were one of the people.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Sorry, first. Bill isn't the only director standing down today, and nor is Robert the only key component of the Ringing Wells operation retiring. Whilst you may not have served as many years as either of them, your 5 years as chairman has been very intense, and you have devoted many hours to the job. During your tenure as chairman, the Ringing World has seen enormous growth in our online subscribers, and the role of Bellboard is the only way that performances are reported and presented these days. You have been initiating the debate and guiding the board members over those years, whilst allowing for full and frank discussions that do not always end up how it initially looked like they might. During those 5 years, I think your main theme has been to look to the future, and in particular a sustainable future for the Ringing World. We have discussed if that would be just a weekly publication or whether there needed to be a step change beyond that. This work hasn't concluded and probably never will as circumstances change. But the company has a new chairman, 3 new members of the board this year, and presumably we shall appoint a new editor this autumn, who will all guide the way through the next few years. Board service is one of the toughest volunteer roles of all, and that is magnified when that role is one of chairman. You perform this role with dedication and tenacity, taking on many tasks above and beyond previous ones where there was no one else available to do them. You distinguish yourself as a great steward of our organisation and never flinched in the face of difficult decisions and situations. On both a professional and a personal level, I am grateful that the time we spent together talking through things. During your time, the ringing world has fully gone online with banking, and you have put up with Bank's quirky and long-winded second authorisation process. There have been years of deficits which have changed to a small surplus each year, and the reserves remain healthy for the medium term at least. So I conclude by wishing you a happy retirement, a second retirement as it were, and hope you can enjoy more time with your family, old cars and old motorbikes. Perhaps more canal trips and holidays as well. Finally, in a moment, here are two little things that I hope you enjoy in due course, and thank you for all you have done.
How well they know me. Right, as I was saying earlier, I can take a limited number of tributes to Robert from the floor, and Mary has specially asked if she may do so.
Right, Mary Byrne, the Secretary of the Central Council. I'd just like to say an enormous thank you to Robert for all, on my behalf, and I think also my immediate predecessors, Ian Oram and Chris Rogers, to say thank you very much for all your support to me and them as Secretary, because it's been invaluable. And could I also just quickly thank Nigel, who was a member of the old Admin Committee, for his contributions to our debates over the years, and a role capably taken on by David into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other quick comments? Tina?
Tina Steck from the Scottish Association. There's probably only myself and one other person in the room who can really appreciate the contribution that Robert has made to the ringing world over the past years. Being the editor of the ringing world is a lot more work than many people appreciate. It can also be a very lonely, but also a very rewarding thing to do. Despite the slightly awkward circumstances of our transition, Robert and I have remained good friends throughout the whole time. And I really, really wish him well, and he's been brilliant. And can I also add, the ringing world of late has been really, really good. It gets better with every issue, and I think everybody in this room should start being evangelists for the ringing world, because the perception that is boring is out of date, and we should act to correct this. But primarily, my very, very sincere congratulations to Robert.
Robert has already received a number of congratulatory and thanking emails, and I would encourage any of you who would like to show their appreciation of him to send him such, and also to see Claire or email her about making a contribution. So I think at this point we should move on and transact any other business. Has anyone any other business to raise? Microphone here, please.
Thank you. Fred Brown, Essex Association. Mr. Chairman, something that doesn't seem to have come out in the reports at all. For about a couple of years now, the online downloadable copies have included the high-res version. I would be interested to know if there are any statistics on the relative popularity of the high-res version for download as opposed to the standard one.
Yeah, perhaps I can answer that. About 5% of downloads are of the high-res version.
Thank you. Any other business? Okay, in that case, I declare the meeting closed and wish you joy of the further meetings that you will be attending today.